Wolfpack Verlis here, and I kind of can't get away with not doing a Greninja Ban video right now because after doing my Greninja review, I'm going to get asked a lot of questions. There's probably already questions even though I haven't uploaded the video yet. I already know there's questions of what I think of the Greninja Ban. I've been asked well over 100 times on Twitter and private messages. I'm trying to respond to many people, but it just takes too much time. So it's easier to do a video discussing my opinion. Now a lot of people will be like, well, stop attacking Smogon. This isn't an attack on Smogon. That disagreeing with a decision shouldn't be seen as an attack, which is already causing concern if it is. And then you also have to look at Smogon's responsibility of this. That they have claimed themselves that they have hundreds of thousands of people. I think it's over 200 or over 300,000 registered players in Smogon, which means that this decision literally affects hundreds of thousands of players, which is a majority of the Pokemon base, which means that there has to be good reasoning for it. And I disagree with the ban because I don't think the reasoning is there. After doing all this research on Greninja, after seeing it in play, after having used it and experienced it and all these other things, that when you think about it, you need to understand why the ban is happening for many things. One, a lot of people, because Smogon is so large and you can't control every person, do think that Smogon is official. That they will be confused by thinking, oh, if they ban in Smogon, it's not usable in Pokemon, or I can't play it with my friends, and then I have to get mad at my friends whenever they use it because they're using a forbidden Pokemon. And that's kind of the ban logic. So when you take a Pokemon as iconic as Greninja, that it's already in Smash Bros, that Pokemon put a lot of thought into it. Even the way it plays, it's Protean, it adapts, it's frail, it has to strike quickly, and it also has to assassinate the target. There is so much lore involved with this Pokemon, and Pokemon knows that, you know, this is one of the most loved Pokemon. It's a badass Pokemon. We have a ninja frog Pokemon that looks cool. Its design has a lot of work put into it. Everything about Greninja is freaking amazing. So, you're going to, when you're making a ban decision like this, it's affecting people on a sentimental level. Now, one, sure, that doesn't necessarily apply to competitive play, but a lot more forethought should go into that when you're going to try to remove this Pokemon to a large amount of players. Also, since that is another point to bring up, that a lot of people that play official rules, you know, Greninja is completely legal anywhere else. That it really needs to be more and more stated, even though Smogon has been doing a good job of explaining, hey, we're not completely official. But since there's still a large amount of players that think Smogon is official, a lot more care and a lot more effort should be putting into establishing that Smogon has no official stand whatsoever. And I think that just a little more effort could be put into that, just personally, because it's happening, and that's a kind of a problem right there. You know, if Greninja's usable everywhere else. That playing on Battle Spot, playing online, playing in tournaments, Greninja is completely legal. But that's where another problem comes in, is because when two people have different rule sets, it's like, oh, you're not allowed to use Greninja, but why is he using Greninja? Oh, he's probably just using it because it's a broken Pokemon and he wants a free win, when Greninja does nothing of that. And that's what I'm going to talk about later when I actually get into the ban reasoning. But that's kind of like the main thing, is that Smogon has a lot of influence, that these decisions need to be treated with more care. And that's why I kind of have to, when I have a disagreement with him, one, I disagree with it on a mental level and on a community level, because it does create a lot of animosity towards the Pokemon that doesn't exist in regular competitive play. That in official play, this animosity shouldn't exist, and that the Pokemon or the strategy loses a huge amount of reputation just for being banned in an unofficial format. That because of Smogon's influence, players will look down on other players over an unofficial decision, and that's just kind of a problem. And one more thing before we talk about the ban, please keep the personal attacks out of this. Like, saying I haven't played Smogon is a lie. I've understood Smogon for at least 6 years now. I've had experience playing it. I've played it before. I've been a part of the format. Saying all those things is just lies and misconceptions, and immediately fills your argument with, it's an attack at that point. That you're blinded by just trying to stand out against me, and it really just invalidates a lot of your argument. So just try to keep it to the Greninja. Try to keep it to the actual thing at play, and try not to misrepresent your community by doing so. So, I don't think Greninja deserves the ban at all when you look at it, because it doesn't have the pure offenses. It's not a Pokemon that's going to mass sweep. That Greninja has to work hard to do a 2-hit, or to get 2 KOs on it under its belt. That it takes a lot of effort to make sure Greninja has the right moveset. That's one of the main things about Greninja, is that you have to have 4 moves, you have to have 1 nature, and you have to have 1 set of EVs. But in this theoretical sense that Greninja can counter out everything in the game, that, you know, nothing can counter Greninja, everything it has 2-hit KO potential on, that's still kind of flawed, because some of those stats, like against Chansey, are under Stealth Rocks, which means advantage was given up at some point to set those rocks and then to get Greninja in. That for Greninja to come in, either has to get the most perfect switch in ever on an excellent prediction, or it's coming in after an opponent, after the Pokemon has gone down. So now Greninja is coming in after that person using Greninja is already at a disadvantage. So even Greninja getting an excellent prediction, not being able to be countered, that's just a 1-for-1. That it's a 1-for-1 when behind, so it really just regains ground effectively while taking out strong Pokemon. Sure, it can do a really good job taking out sweepers. It can take out Pokemon that have a lot more potential than it. But that's what the Greninja is good for. It's trying to level that field by going for a 1-for-1. The little more it can come up with another damage. It might be able to get a second KO. But overall, it's just too frail, and it doesn't have enough damage. That's not going to monstrously smash down everything. That does take a lot of excellent prediction. And even with that prediction, some of it's a risk. Okay, so first I have to guess that my opponent is going into a fairy typing, and then I have to land the 80% accuracy move. Nothing's guaranteed. Also, when you're splitting the EVs, because a lot of people, you have to invest something into attack to make it strong enough. A lot of people have found like 96 being a good sweet spot. Even then, like 96, okay, now I have to hit a Hydro Pump. I have to hit a super effective Dark Pulse or Ice Beam against a frail Pokemon, and if that Pokemon survives, alright, like it only works against Pokemon switching in and getting perfect predicted, but that's not a bad thing in the game. That means you're rewarding good play, or you're just rewarding a good time to bring out Greninja. That bringing in Greninja to super effective the opponent that just knocked out a Pokemon of yours, or that you got a good chance to get Greninja in, that shouldn't be punished. That's decent play, and it's not even guaranteed. That Greninja can show up and not do anything if it has the wrong moveset. That Greninja, while it is a risk to be an excellent Pokemon, it's also a risk to be a very poor Pokemon. That if it doesn't have the right moveset, sometimes Gunk Shot's a risk. If they don't have Fairy types, now you hit, you don't really get too much on it. Okay, Grass type Pokemon, well, Ice Beam on a higher super effective Ice attack is going to be a little better in some cases, There's other options that make Greninja just fall flat sometimes, or it can have the right moveset and get 2 or 3 KOs. But that isn't reliable. It's not genuinely destructive. That it comes in, it makes a good play, and it can get punished super hard. That anything that outspeeds it, it's gone. Focus Sash, it's gone. Harder hits, like it goes down to hard neutral hits. So even Protean's not really a problem because it doesn't really adapt. Like Greninja rarely uses Protean defensively, so that's not really a reason to make it even more of a problem. Also, offensively, okay, now it has 4 stab moves instead of 2. It's not like stab is this thing exclusive to Protean. Every Pokemon gets stabbed. So Garchomp using Dragon Claw and Earthquake, it has higher attack. It can get neutral KOs with those moves sometimes, and that's because it has natural stab. It doesn't need that Protean. So it's like Greninja doesn't even have an ability. The Greninja, its ability is to hit okay on low bases. That, special attack and attack, it's a 2-hit KO on a lot of things, but even on the super effective hits like Low Kick, Gunk Shot, these are super effective 2-hit KOs. So I mean, it has to be that prediction. If the opponent doesn't fall for Greninja, then it's over. And I think that's the problem with the mentality. Is that the mentality is like, this Pokemon's unstoppable because it's a 2-hit, it can 2-hit KO Pokemon, it can just switch in on it, or nothing can switch in on it. Well, what if the opponent just doesn't fall for that? Now you have some problems going on right there if, they don't want to switch, like you overpredict, or they just have a stronger Pokemon that naturally takes out Greninja, that they got a sweeper set up. Greninja's not in the position to take out a hyper offensive sweeper. Balanced teams do well against it. Everything does well against it except for that one play that Greninja can make. And I don't think that should be punished as a bannable Pokemon. That's like, okay, now we're looking at this game that you're restricting play to hundreds of thousands of players just because Greninja has good coverage. It can balance out a team really well. Like, putting on your team does bring a good balance, but it doesn't really do much if you're not playing it perfectly, and it just looks for an opportunity. That is an opportunist, and you're punishing that, I just say unjustly. That if you look at a lot of Pokemon, Mega Medicham theoretically has no Pokemon that can switch into it safely because it's just so absurd. Now, while it is a little bit different because Greninja can come in and you force a switch, Medicham doesn't come in and force a switch all the time, but if we're looking at it from that counter mentality, a lot of Pokemon can have a case made for it that with a high amount of coverage, with the perfect moveset and the perfect ability at the right time, with the perfect EV spread, it can counter out the entire game. It's not exclusive to Greninja. I think that's one of the problems is a lot of people, it's flavor of the month. People are overhyping it. Everyone's like, oh my god, Greninja's busted, so I have to use it. Then people call out problems like, oh, it's over-centralizing because everyone's using it. But I think that's just because of the mentality. That's, oh, have to use it before it gets banned so I can get as many wins as possible, and then complain about it being broken. When really it doesn't have that when you start breaking it down, that it has to have the right moveset. It has to have the right everything. And even then, it's not even over-centralizing. Over-centralizing is when it's preventing things from happening, when it's making it impossible to use anything. Well, that's actually one of Greninja's strengths, is that it's so strong against everything, it outclasses everything equally. That it's like, just because Gunk Shot Greninja exists doesn't mean fairies are completely unplayable. That everything has relatively the same usage. Very few things are like, oh, I can't play because of Greninja. It's more that people are throwing Greninja on its team because it makes sense. One, Greninja's good. You can literally put it on any team. That's not bannable. It also just like rounds out, but the problem is a lot of people are just bandwagoning it. A lot of people are bandwagoning Greninja. They're saying all these things that really don't make sense. Like, in the definition of an Uber, I didn't think a Pokemon that could 1-for-1 maybe get 2 KOs is too busted. You know, Kangaskhan, Aegislash, those Pokemon will run you over. Greninja doesn't run over teams. I've never seen a Greninja go 6-0. I've never had my Greninja do anything absurd. It's good. It sets up for your team, but even then, it's a sweeper. It's made of glass. And it's not even over-centralizing because putting it on a team doesn't over-centralize. When it's making it impossible for other Pokemon to be played, that's what true over-centralization is, and it can't do that because, sure, it's like maybe Starmie and Alakazam could get more play without Greninja, but you weren't seeing those Pokemon getting play before Greninja got Gunk Shot because they're effectively the same thing. That's like, okay, they have high speed, high special attack, crazy coverage. If they super, it's going to win. They do effectively the same thing. It's just like Greninja got an extra move. It has to lower its overall power just to make it a 2-hit KO on some things after Stealth Rocks, after an advantage has been given up. I just don't think that makes sense for a ban, and I don't think it's good enough to justify, one, banning it to several thousand people and changing the influence of Pokemon, because now we have it to where a lot of kids are running Greninja, a lot of people are running Greninja, and then it's going to backfire on those people that are playing officially. And then also, if we look at it from the standpoint, Greninja is already like a mascot in its own right of Pokemon, that it's so loved, and now all of a sudden it's like, wait, why is it being banned? And most of the logic is false, that a lot of people are spreading all this false logic that it over-centralizes, and that's a huge threat. When you look at the history of Pokemon, when you look at the history of even Smogon bans, that it just doesn't make sense in any of that context, and it just has more weight because it is a heavy sentimental Pokemon that is going to create a lot more problems by banning it than solving it. I'm actually for the ban in the way that it's going to piss a lot of people off. A lot of people are going to be like, well, I love Greninja too much to like just not be able to use my favorite Pokemon. I'm going to leave Smogon. I'm okay if it's going to make people mad. And also, I feel like it does make it to where a lot of people that can kind of see through, it's like, well, if a 1-for-1 under perfect play is too strong, metagame's way out of whack. And I think that through all these banning, it's that reverse power creep I've been talking about for a while, that with nothing out there, you know, a lot of the strong megas are gone, a lot of the strong potential is gone. Something like Greninja, which doesn't even have 15th, it's not even used 15th most in Pokemon, like in the battle spot, 6v6 battle spot even. And of course, I know that Battle Spot and Smogon aren't the exact same formats, but they do have a lot of similarities that I think need to be respected. That if you break it down, let's define Battle Spot. When I say Battle Spot, I mean Ranked Battle Spot. Ranked Battle Spot is no legendaries, so it's already very similar in that regard. But the only difference is that, you know, some megas are allowed and and there aren't clauses to worry about. So I mean, if we have Evasion Clause, Evasion is maybe used once in every 50 battles, if that. Like, it's 2-3% usage at max. Same with Swagger and Baton Pass. It's really niche strategies that are somewhat frustrating, but they don't break the game. When we look at the megas and we look at the other bands, a lot of the usage is evenly distributed. That in Battle Spot, we don't see a lot of Gengar. We don't see any Lucario, Mega Gengar. We do see, you know, Aegislash, Mawile, and Kangaskhan being popular. That's because they're naturally strong Pokemon, but they generally balance each other out. That they don't have they're not in every single battle. They don't have the highest possible usage. That they aren't really creating too many centralization issues in that format. So while not directly related to Smogon, there are things that you can make a case that's saying, you know, it's very similar. It's still a single battle format. The same fundamentals, the same mentality, the same team building. You can make a team for Battle Spot 6v6 that doesn't have any Smogon banned Pokemon, be successful in Battle Spot, be successful in Smogon OU, and vice versa. That, you know, if X Pokemon was allowed, you can build a Battle Spot team, bring it to Smogon, and it wouldn't be creating any over-centralization issues, but it would still also be a very strong and respectable team. So then we can break it down even further, you know, Battle Spot 3v3. bring 6, pick 3. Well, bring 6, that's, you're not going to change your team too much because I can only bring 3. You still want a really balanced team. You want the most balanced team possible. That way your 3 picks have the best chance of countering any of their 3 picks. And that actually can kind of go, same 6v6 team building. The actual battle itself might be different, but it just kind of shows with the usage of the Pokemon where this lies. That, the Pokemon being built, the Pokemon being brought aren't these huge threat problems. And that's where Greninja comes in. That if Greninja had incredibly high usage, if Greninja was a threat in Battle Spot, it would show that maybe it's a threatening Pokemon worthy of being banned. But since in Battle Spot, which we've kind of shown is similar, it just doesn't have that usage because it's not an absurd Pokemon. It's not always going to show up. It's not always going to win games. It's not always going to smash people's faces. It's not always going to get the perfect prediction. That this ban is off of perfect predicting. And even then, like in an unbalanced format like Smogon, I feel is starting to become because of all these decisions, it shows that Greninja can be a wild card that might cause some disruption, but when you look at its actual strength, anywhere, just even in Smogon, even in other formats, it doesn't have raw, abusable power. I think that that's one of the things that needed to be addressed with this. Also, let's look at it like this. Battle Spot 6v6. Ranked Battle Spot 6v6 is a real format, just as real as Smogon is. If you say Battle Spot 6v6 doesn't exist, then you're saying Smogon doesn't exist. Sure, it's not programmed into the game, but it's not hard to say Battle Spot rules, bring 6 Pokemon, don't pick 3. And it's just as easy as if you play Smogon format on your DS. You have to say, okay, let's play Smogon rules. These Pokemon are banned, can't use this and this and this. Except, I think that Pokemon is a lot more clear. That it's like, oh, can you use that team in Battle Spot? Cool, that's Battle Spot ranked. I brought this Pokemon, like, I can bring this Pokemon, you can bring that Pokemon. And it's a lot more coherent than the Smogon rules to describe and to kind of show off, because you have to be like, can't use this, can't use this, can't use this. And I think that that's a clarity issue that just gets more clouded because of the way that the Greninja ban is going through. So overall, can't really say that there's no difference between 6v6 Battle Spot and Smogon. I think that that's a fairly elitist statement, and it makes the community look bad when they're saying, when someone says, there's no difference, because that has that ignorant mentality of like, oh, well, Smogon's just better than the regular rules in every way. And that's kind of making a broad statement that overlooks a lot of things and takes away the similarities and takes away, some of the things that could go against the ban that do make a lot of sense. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys took the entire video and could at least understand a little more about Greninja, maybe think about it in a different way. If you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day.